power of attorney, and advance directives, which is for medical.
Okay.
So in Connecticut, Connecticut's documents are a will, a power of attorney, which is where you appoint someone to make financial decisions on your behalf. And that's a document that is most relevant while you're alive. Actually, it's only relevant while you're alive.
Okay.
Because it terminates upon your death. And the last thing is the advance medical directive, where you appoint someone to make medical decisions for you. Again, that's a very important document, most important while you're alive, because you're appointing someone to make medical decisions for you. Everyone should have at least those 3 documents, because that's gonna cover a majority of most of your situation going forward. Now, when you talk about more grandiose estate planning, including trusts in that scenario, we're talking about ensuring that your assets pass to people the way you want them to pass.
And also with the most amount of tax efficiency.
Correct. That's becoming less and less of an issue given the expanding estate tax exemptions. But
how often do people, I'm going to switch gears slightly, how often do people come into your office where you see that they have assets, retirement accounts, life insurance, maybe annuities, stuff like that, where the beneficiary designations either haven't been made, or you can't find the records of them, or they're clearly not in line with the owner's intentions?
More than half of the time I sit down with people.
Okay.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest problem. People don't realize, they think, well, my will's going to take care of it.
Yeah.
More often than not, people don't understand that their will has no impact on the beneficiary-driven assets.
So this is a great point of emphasis for people that are listening, because if I have a will, and let's just say, for argument's sake, I leave everything to my wife in the will, right, and then my children, but I have an IRA, and I name my best friend as the beneficiary, and I pass away, what it says in the will is irrelevant to what happens with the IRA.
Correct. Yeah, the beneficiary designation trumps the will.
Okay. And that's what you were saying, is a lot of people don't realize that. They think the beneficiary isn't that important because I have a will, but they're completely separate tracks and they're independent of one another.
Absolutely. What we like to do is, whenever we meet with a client, we like a good financial picture of what their assets are. And so if we see life insurance or IRAs and 401ks, the next question is, who are the beneficiaries? And they usually say, I think it's my wife. I think the backup is my kids. And I say, okay, you're going to want to confirm that for our next meeting.
Sure.
Because that's 90% of your assets are in your retirement
plan. In a lot of instances, you could have the will might have, like, say, the house and the checking account and maybe cars, some personal effects, but you could have like $1.5 million in retirement accounts and life insurance that you don't even know if there's beneficiaries on file.
Right, and that's becoming more and more the norm, especially for people our age. We're socking a lot of money anyway in retirement plans. And the largest asset most people that I see coming in is their retirement plans.
So that's a point of emphasis when we meet with clients and or potential clients, is we've really adopted a posture where we want to go out of our way to work with them on the beneficiaries, make sure that they're up to date, coordinate with their estate planning attorney, a firm like yours, and also to make sure that there's actually a written record of it. Because one of the things we found, Mike, I don't know if you come across this a lot, with all the changes and mergers and acquisitions and technology changes over the years, if you had made a beneficiary designation a while ago, it may not be retrievable by anybody, and so then it doesn't exist. So we want to make sure that we have it, and we have a copy of it, the attorney has a copy of it, the client and his or her spouse might have a copy of it, because that's important too, right?
Absolutely. Part of what we do as well is estate administration. So once someone passes away, we help the family marshal the assets and get them to who they're supposed to be left to. There have been a couple times where with IRAs or other annuities, the financial institution couldn't find. And we happen to have one in our file, and we presented it to them. So it's helpful to have that spread out in as many places as possible.
Because even though the institution should be doing that, they're not really obligated to do that. And in the case where you have mergers, acquisitions, or just time marches on,
it may just get lost in the mix. Right.
Okay.
The other thing we like to do is do a flow chart of people's assets to say, if you pass away, here's where your assets are going to go. And just do little arrows saying this person's going to get this, person's going to get that. And kind of summarize what they're going to get upon your death. Say, well, this person's going to get X dollars, this one's going to get Y dollars. Is that what you intended? It's amazing how often than not people are surprised as to see where their money goes upon their death.
Very good. two topics I wanted to cover with you as we kind of begin to wind down is long-term care insurance, long-term care protection. It's a little bit of an interesting topic, I think, because the marketplace for long-term care insurance is not very healthy. And it's been problematic over these many years where people that own policies have seen premium increases. The cost of coverage has gotten much more expensive over the years. So what is your thoughts on long-term care when someone comes in and I think you would agree, they have to have a certain amount of affluence in order to even consider it because it needs to make sense financially, budget-wise. But what are your thoughts on long-term care?
I like it.
I like it.
Part of a review on estate planning is looking at long-term care expenses for a client. And if they have the financial resources, it's something we certainly discuss. I obviously don't sell it being an attorney, but I often point them to your direction.
Right.
Say this is something that you might inquire to see what's available, how much could you afford, and how much coverage can you get under the right circumstances. But you are correct. I mean, there's you have to have a certain level of wealth in order to look into that.
Right. So, I mean, I think for the purposes of this show, if somebody's over the age 60 and they have accumulated a decent nest egg, they're not living paycheck to paycheck, check in with us, check in with your financial professional, explore, like Mike said, what kind of coverage you could get, what it would cost, does it fit into your overall plan. It's definitely worth considering and exploring. Maybe you decide to do it, maybe not, but it's something you want to be very aware of once you get to age 60 and beyond.
Absolutely. Well, you know better than I, as you get older, that the cost of those policies go up exponentially.
That's right. And then the second of the two topics I wanted to cover with you briefly is in a recent episode, I focused on stretch IRAs or inherited IRAs. And in researching the topic, which I know a lot about because we do it all the time, I saw some statistics that, and this was episode number 44 of season number 2, if you wanted to listen to it, if you haven't already. But hardly anyone sets up stretch IRAs. So if you have a non-spouse beneficiary, I think only 10% of those beneficiaries set up inherited or stretch IRAs. And the number one reason why they don't set it up is that they don't know about it. And I talked on the episode that seems to be a shame because it's a wonderful wealth creation tool.
Absolutely.
It's great on the tax front, accumulating wealth, getting money from generation to generation. You must come into contact with stretch IRA opportunities from time to time. So what are your thoughts on inherited IRAs?
We deal with them all the time, especially when we're dealing with people within our demographic. Pushing 50 years old, have a couple kids who are...
I'm pushing 50? I did just turn 48, so I guess that's true, but that was a little hard to hear.
Hey, I'm 48 as well. But in any event, dealing with children who are, teenagers, you don't necessarily want to leave those assets outright to them. Not quite sure how they're going to be with money, but we also want to plan for our deaths. So we deal with setting up a trust as the beneficiary of an IRA, and in that is the ability to stretch that IRA out over the child's lifetime. That creates tremendous wealth.
And that seems to be, I think the inherited stretch IRA is underutilized, which is an absolute shame. But then what you're describing, where the original owner of the IRA, before passing away, could provide some control to the process by setting up a trust and setting up a stretch IRA and wrapping them together. Is that a good way to describe it?
Correct. Yeah, there's two different ways you obviously can leave your IRA directly outright to your children, and then they have the ability to stretch it.
Yes.
Which goes to your first point of making sure that your children understand what that means.
Right.
And the second is not necessarily naming your children, if they're minors, as the direct beneficiary of your IRA, but a trust for their benefit to protect them while they're financially mature and don't understand what a stretch IRA is.
That's perfect. Good. So, thank you. Was there anything that we didn't cover that you would like to cover?
No, I think you've pretty much covered it all.
Have you ever done a podcast like this?
No, this is my first time.
Very cool. Well,
Yes.
You did a great job. It was a nice conversation.
It was very easy.
I think the listeners will get a lot out of this. If you want, if someone wanted to get more information about your firm, can you give a website?
Sure. Our website is www.henryfederer.com, which is the name of the firm, which is Henry, and then Federer, like the tennis player, FEDERER.com.
So for regular listeners, my website is www.elliottwealth.com. If you didn't catch Mike's website address, it'll be displayed at the Elliott Wealth site. Please, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast already, you could do so on iTunes, Stitcher, other podcast platforms. You could also do it at the Elliott Wealth website. I'd really love it if you could subscribe to it, so please make my day. And I'll be back with you on an upcoming episode of the Simply Financial podcast very soon. Thank you.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of SagePoint Financial Incorporated and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Please note, the information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of the information provided at these websites, nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to your use of third-party technologies, websites, information, and programs made available through this website. When you access one of these websites, you are leaving our website and assume total responsibility and risk for your use of the websites you are linking to. Securities and advisory services are offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Insurance services offered through Elliott Wealth Management, LLC, not affiliated with SagePoint Financial.
Simply Financial is part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can find Exvadio podcasts at exvadio.com/podcast, the Apple Podcasts app, iTunes Store, iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts. So join us and stay informed and entertained.